got to run to keep from rising, and I'm bound to keep on rising. I got one more silver dollar, and I'm not gonna let 'em catch me, no, not gonna let 'em catch me now. I don't own the clothes I'm wearing, and the road goes on forever. I got one more silver dollar, and I'm not gonna let 'em catch me, good. Not gonna let 'em catch me now. I'm past the point of giving, who's there I'll soon be sharing. I got one more silver dollar, and I'm not gonna let it catch me, no, not gonna let it.
Welcome to the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show. I'm your host, Tony Arterburn. I'm joined by my co-host, Kinsey, where all the research comes from, where all the smart, intellectual talk comes from on this program. Glad to have her back. We're broadcasting live on aftermath.fm as well as all the technocratic approved platforms for now. Anyway, you can join the chat anywhere you can find Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show. Feel free to join the chat. So we're going to get into, one of those conversations that Kinsey and I always have about markets and the monetary system and wealth and warfare and Bitcoin and bullion and all that good stuff. Because we're in this weird, that's what I was saying to Kinsey before the show, was there's something just very strange about this time frame. Something very strange about the news items. I feel like I'm in a Bermuda Triangle, like we're in this with finances, with crypto, with bullion, with everything. It's just everything's the upside down. I was like, do we name the show F for fake, or do we call it the bullion in the Bermuda Triangle? Because I can't tell. I mean, everything's fake, everything's upside down. All my instruments are spinning. I have no way to gauge what the hell is actually going on, because I look and I know what happened in 2020. I know what happened since 1971. And of course, really, I know what happened after 1913 in the Federal Reserve and what is going on, because you see this massive amount of inflation. People are, even like my internet marketing people, that firm like raised their rates on me because of inflation. I'm not kidding. They're like, it just cost us more. Like everything costs more. It goes into it gets its tentacles into everything except the very thing that should go up, which is precious metals, right? We know why, but it still is difficult why the mainstream hasn't caught on to this. Even the smart set. What's going on, Kinsey? I mean, am I in the Bermuda Triangle? What is this?
I've said before we're in another dimension, but that's it. We've made our way into the Bermuda Triangle, and left is right, right is left. It's not pretty. I'm scared, Tony. I'm so scared. I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm actually scared right now. On the last show that I was on with you and
Billy
Billy
Ray?
the Kid there, Billy Ray. Yeah. I had actually mentioned, like, I had it in the notes that, hey, I feel a crash coming on. And I'm not a super smart person. I just get good gut feelings. I look at these charts and I'm like, something bad is about to happen. Now, I actually did not jump into that crash. I wanted to be a little careful. I don't regret that because I still feel so scared right now. Um I've actually been trying for like the past 2 hours to get into another coin, and I feel retarded. I feel retarded because I'm trying to jump into something whenever I know that it can all go wrong so fast.
You
Like, I
talking about
know
like
that
an
in my head.
altcoin? You thought about getting into one of the that one of those parabolic explosions in some altcoin? Are you trying to get on the
Well,
wave?
more like a longer term play. Like, if it did something crazy, of course, I always take profits when stuff just starts going crazy. But it is supposed to be a long term play. I had mentioned in the last podcast that I did with you on America Unplugged that towards the end there, I mentioned crypto gaming. And that's where a lot of my focus is right now. And a lot of these players, like, they're not going to make it. But there's a few gyms out there that, I've been slowly trying to get into. The only tough part about that, is the Ethereum gas fees they're insane. You know, I'm spending $100 into a coin and it's like, hey, your gas fee is like $70. And then I'm like, maybe I don't want this. I don't know. I've been dealing with that today. So
Yeah,
I don't
it's
like it.
weird. Like I'm bullish on the crypto technology,
Hmm.
but I also realize that the institutional money, the fake federal fiat notes are tied to that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a crash, and that's a philosophical question, and I think a good question. If there's so much institutional money tied to crypto, even if those of us who believe that crypto is revolutionary and it's good, I mean, on a whole, not the central bank digital currencies and not a lot of the junk coins, but the overall technology is good, especially Bitcoin, things like that, and privacy
Hmm.
coins. But I mean, I look at this and I'm like, what? Where are they? Where are they going to take this if the
Hmm.
market crashes? Like, where's it going to go? You know what I mean? Like, there, if you see any kind of stumble in the actual stock market in the casino, is going to have a huge impact on the crypto market. I mean, like it or not. Yet
Oh
some people
yeah.
may use Bitcoin as a lifeboat just like
Hmm.
you use gold or silver. But you see,
Hmm.
like, what do you think? Is there anything between the reading between the lines in the last week when you saw Bitcoin go into how did it go into like the high 40s? Didn't it? Now it's back up.
Yeah.
I think we broke 50,000 a day. I'll get the spot price here in a minute. It's the ticker is always on wisewolf.gold, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to see the prices for crypto in real time, yeah, it looks like it's 50,701 for Bitcoin. But what did you read between the lines during that crash? Because we were trending towards getting into the 60s again, 70s possibly, breaking more records. What happened?
It could have been sell limits that were set, just executing certain prices. And now we know it was an astonishing amount of Bitcoin that was sold in under a minute. I forget the actual amount, but what caused that to happen was like 300 and something Bitcoin, I think, were all sold at the same time within 1 minute. So we're talking about one huge player. I don't know if that's a long term, super whale. There's a difference between whales and super whales. Um, so I don't know if that was that. It could be the banking sector. I know that they're in this too. There could be some higher ups out there that are moving things around. To me, it reminds me of some of the other crashes that we've had before, which I wouldn't call this a crash. I mean, it was like 20 or 30%, no big deal. Like, talk to me when we're 80% down. Then I'll tell you it's a crash. Um, so I but all of it being sold at one time was kind of the weird part to me, and this really felt like some of the previous crashes where it's the setup, you get people to come in and they're going to buy up that floor, they're excited to buy up that floor, and then the bottom really falls out. Um this is this is something that, I wait for, I actually get excited for. Other people are going to lose their minds. But hey, if you're losing your mind, then you had no business putting that money in this particular area in the first place. The only thing, the stock market is like the riskiest thing to me. But let me tell you why I think that that's so risky is they turn it off and on whenever they want to, Tony. At
Right.
least with crypto, whether it's going way high or way low, I've got the option to get out whenever I want to. I don't
Right.
have that option in the stock market.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a question I need to continue to hone and ask more and more because, I'm talking about these sectors and, gold and silver tend to be a little boring. And the reason is because gold and silver to me are money. They're not really an investment per se. They are, they can be. You can do short-term gains on going in short gold or go the long game on gold or silver. I think silver is a really good play right now. But I mean,
Always.
I think, when I look at the crypto sector and the explosion in the numbers and how much wealth it's created, I just wonder, on a long-term, scalable, you know, how would you look at this? Because if it's tied to the stock market, do you think and I this is funny how we get off on these little tangents, but I was just thinking when you were, we were looking at this market and talking about Bitcoin, do you think that will be the crypto will be a new space like a lifeboat away from is the stock market kind of like the silent movie stars with NFTs and crypto? Do you see like Hollywood has the talkies, back in the 20s, like there's these big, stars in Hollywood that were all in the silent movies. And then all of a sudden there's the talkies and the silent people didn't really make it. Do you think that Wall Street is antiquated? And, do you think that crypto will be a lifeboat or will it go with the institutional markets in a crash?
I think in the beginning, because we have so much institutional money now that's in this market, I think it's going to go with it because a lot of people are using crypto to hedge their bets in the stocks and they're using stocks to hedge their bets with crypto. So we've got this big mixed bag right now. And when this all, I'm not just saying crypto or stocks start to go down, but I'm saying when this all starts to go down, I think there's a pretty good chance that it could all move together to a degree for a time. But I truly see Wall Street as we know it is going to be so different within the next 10 years. And I've thought this since like 2014, 2015 that crypto is going to end up being your new stock market. The very interesting thing here, I love decentralization. Absolutely love it. But also what scares me is the World Economic Forum also seems to really like it and hype it up. But their form of this is totally different than what you or I think about it, Tony, because they want me to have an ID or passports or, they want my banking statements to be able to deal with them. And although I do use some platforms that are KYC, I think that it's so important for people to have one, hard wallets where there is, some savings stashed aside in those hard wallets. And two, get familiar with a non KYC type platform. And yes, there is some risk in that, but Big Brother isn't watching your every move there. In India, I think they actually just passed a law like they're cool with crypto, but you have to use KYC exchanges. They want your IDs, they want to know what you're moving around. And I don't like that. I don't agree. I don't agree with it.
There's a headline up on Drudge. I wanted to get your thoughts too. Facebook recently changed their name to Meta,
Meta.
and they're going into the metaverse. What do you think about crypto? And of course, they said Bitcoin is part of the meta future as currency, as a way to bring value to that space. If that is, it's actually a no place. It's not a space at all. But the metaverse is something that's up and coming. They if you want to look into, you mentioned the World Economic Forum, you hear the word sustainability a lot,
Mhm.
and that's a key phrase in Agenda 2030 in the United Nations and, the agenda for the 21st century, which is sustainability. And they want you to own nothing and be happy. It's what their documents say. It's what their website, it's what their marketing campaign says. And of course, the metaverse is just geared to that. And you look at the movies like Ready Player One, from
Mhm.
a few years back. And, there's this people living on top of each other in boxes, but they have the metaverse, they can get into the virtual world. And
Mhm.
Bitcoin looks to be a part of that, or crypto. I'm not sold on that. I'm certainly not endorsing that. That's not in
No.
my wheelhouse. But I do see that as part of the future. Do you think um, that they will, go hand in hand? Do you think that this meta that they're talking about will link up with cryptocurrency?
Absolutely. I mean, it's already been predicted in the past. There's different books and movies from way back when, and I gotta say, some of them are actually superior to like George Orwell's 1984. That was a good, kind of outline as to what's going to come. But there's other, books and things out there that get more detailed with these sorts of things. And what's really sad is the fact that we've got normal everyday people that they're building this incredible technology that works with Web3. And what makes Web3 so awesome, in my opinion, is that these giant companies can't necessarily use you anymore and just kind of farm your data. Like you're in control of everything at this point. And that's kind of the whole point to NFTs as well. I know a lot of people, just look at the JPEGs and they're like, "Oh, well, I can screenshot it. I got the same thing." Like, no, that's different. That's not ownership. Like, can you sell that JPEG that you just screenshot for $3 million? No, but the guy that actually owns it can. And this will play a big role in social media and things that are coming up as well. Whenever I say I'm also like investing in gaming crypto, it's not just the gaming side; it is the social media. I'm investing in platforms. That I think will far surpass what D Live has done. There's the chance that it far surpasses what Odyssey ends up doing. And it really puts a lot of the control in your hands, and nobody can take that away. That's the beautiful thing about, I guess, good and bad about blockchain is once it's there, it can never leave. So we have ownership of that, Tony. And I'm very excited. You know, if we get in this kind of stuff early enough or we figure out what's happening, I think that that means that you and I could be somewhat safe as far as continuing to be able to get content out there. As long as we're still living and breathing, I think we're going to be trying to get information out to people, but there's going to be obstacles in the way of that. Um, and another reason I think that it's so important to be involved in what's happening now, whether you like it or not. I'm not a huge fan of crypto, but I'm also not stupid. I see the direction that things are going in. If I continue to only buy gold and silver or food or ammo or whatever people yell at me about, I'm going to end up getting left behind. There's only so much food everybody that's always yelling at me about food, like, what is the square footage of your house and where are you putting all of this? Cuz I am mad confused. Like, congratulations if you have a bunker, but I don't. Maybe if I do enough of my crypto, I can get a bunker and stack more food back. Um, but no, I truly feel like this is so important because we're heading into the haves and the have-nots, and you've already got that. And I'm not saying, "Oh, I wanna be rich, famous, and wealthy." Like, no, I just kinda wanna disappear and be okay. Like, I
Right.
wanna be financially okay. And it's not something that I necessarily like or other people like, but with money, there's power. So if I'm investing right and the future gets really cattywampus, maybe I have a little bit more flexibility. What we need to think about is not one or the other. You want to have multiple directions that you can turn to. Each place that I invest in is another buffer zone. So when I get hit, it's not so hard. I'm not literally getting smacked in the face. I can dodge it.
It's interesting. Yeah, I've been doing everything I can to prepare for what's to come. Like everything with my business. That's one thing that's been up when I lay down at night. I'm like, I didn't do enough.
Mhm.
Because I've had this feeling in my gut, like, I had this, I've had this for a long time, but it's getting more pronounced, and like I feel like that analogy of just sitting in a cockpit of a plane when the Bermuda Triangle and nothing works and everything's spinning. I'm trying to make my own compass, just
Uh-huh.
my experience. And I'm like, okay, I got to make sure that all my banking is good. So I've been working on my banking and make sure I have backups for how you can pay, like how I get
Mhm.
gold and silver at the shop, and then like exchange backups for crypto, everything like licensing, all of this stuff, and then just inroads to other wholesalers. Like if I have to pick up the phone and place an order, like how am I going to do that? And
Mhm.
that's what's weighing on me because I think all of these headlines, and I filled in for David Knight last week, and of course you were on, but it just felt like I was pulling in all this information and doing, show prep, and I'm just like, there's just so much here. There's so much happening at once, and whether it's foreign policy, you're looking at. I mean, I don't know why this even concerns us, but Russia's and Ukraine could have a conflict, could have something heat up, and for whatever reason, the defense establishment in this country thinks that Ukraine is, South Texas or something. I don't know what's on their mind, but they think it's like, that's what we have to defend. It's in Europe. It's over there. It's the breadbasket. And thank God it's not in NATO, because we'd already be in some kind of conflict, I assume. But that's kicking off. You have the Chinese and Taiwan. You have, I mean, our government, the U.S. government, is run by, I call them meat puppets. I think that might be too kind. I mean, it's like some people without the mental faculties or the will or the character to even have roads built. People say, well, if there's no government, and who will fix the roads? And then I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Pothole Pete. Pothole Pete is in charge of the transportation secretary. It's Pothole Pete. He's mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and Mayor Pete, but he was called Pothole Pete, and then they put him in charge of the infrastructure. So we have this, it's a perfect storm. There's volatility abroad, there's volatility at home. The markets are fake, and I hear a lot of people trying to explain it and do analysis, and they just lose me when they don't mention the fact that the dollar just does, I'm getting on the screen here. The dollar just does this decline,
Oh, but Tony, it's up today. It's gotta jump
it's
in
a
that dollar
strong
because
dollar.
it's
It's like, okay, so Superman is, plunging to his doom, but he kind of picks up a little bit, and you're like, see, he's fine, and no, it's not. He got struck by a kryptonite, lightning bolt or something, and that's what's happening. Is you got this descent of what was once a mighty, a dollar that was, had no rival, and people took it for granted, but it's tanked. I mean, they tanked this thing, and I mean, this is what I'm trying to figure out. I'm looking at all the headlines. I'm seeing where gold is, and then I know what happened to the economy, and I know what they're going to do, because they only have one more. I mean, they only have, actually, one gear, I should say, for fixing the economy, Kinsey, and that's just print money, print currency.
Yep. Which is exactly why you put your money anywhere else but just holding dollars. Like, literally, guys, if you bought canned corn a year ago, I think you're up like 15%. So
you're doing good. Yeah.
You're doing good.
You're doing good. And of course, if you imagine the person who just got all their cards printed for Dollar Tree, like, I just bought a franchise, or I got a Dollar General, and they're like, no, it's $1.25, $1.50 General, like, oh man, all those years of it being 99 cents, that should tell you everything you need to know. Like, since, I was thinking of when I was 19, I went to a Dollar General, and I was thinking about everything costs $1, and you go to, 99-cent stores, to get supplies before I went to the Army. And then I'm thinking that lasted up until this year. Like, and then people were like, everything's fine. They just printed 40% of all the dollars ever made from 1776 to now.
Yeah.
But it's all going to be fine, because Jim Cramer's going to fix it. He's got mad money, Kinsey. Don't you know?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing at you. And let me just butt in here. Matthew and Jessica Henry in chat said that use that corn to make alcohol, and your investment is worth even more. If you use alcohol or you make alcohol with that corn, yeah, I mean, you've just like 20x'd, right?
It's never a bad idea to make homegrown, I guess. You can always use that corn for something. Absolutely.
And Tony Daniel says, if the lights go out, crypto is worthless, isn't it?
Yeah, like if there's an EMP and there is no more lights, I mean, on at a certain level, I mean, if the lights go out and it's temporary, then you're going to be okay. But I mean, yeah, I guess if it's if it's the end of electricity or an internet, I mean, we're going to have much more problems than what your portfolio looks like.
Yep, that's people always hit me with that, and I'm like, if the lights go out, I've got much larger problem. It's kind of the internet memes that we see with like Elmo in the fire and the toddler in the house behind her is on fire. It's like I've got much larger problems. Everything is not fine. If that happens, yeah, we're all screwed.
I mean,
Um,
neither reality would surprise me. Like if you got into that, time machine, the H.G. Wells time machine, and you went forward 30 years, and if I went forward 30 years and it looked like the wasteland from the Matrix, I wouldn't be that surprised. And if it looked okay, and maybe there was like regional pockets of new republics sprang up, and we use cryptocurrency, and the ruling class is no longer ruling. I don't know if I guess
mhm.
I'd be a little bit more surprised, but I mean, we're living such a volatile time. It could go either way.
The really cool
That's why I
thing.
named the show Gold and Crypto, because I'm gold first, metals first, and then we
Mhm,
talk about crypto because I think it's a fascinating technology. And if we do have the internet and we do have electricity, which we've had since the last 20 years in our mainstream society, and of course you had rural electrification like in the 1930s.
mhm.
But, I mean, we've had it for a long time, so, if if my normalcy bias overrode my pessimism, I apologize.
There's that, and then, also kind of the other interesting side of this is now don't hold me to this. Don't be mad at me like 30 years from now if this doesn't go how I said it would right now. Let's say that an EMP or something did hit. The really neat thing about the, blockchain data that's there is once we were able to turn lights on again, that all of that data is still gonna be there. Your wallets are not lost, none of that is lost, but that's also why it's important maybe not just to have your hard wallet, if you don't have that somewhere safe, maybe the EMP does affect that, so remember, hard wallet can also be paper wallets. If all of that were able to come back on and let's say that we started restoring society, well, the banking system is still gonna be down. They haven't fully backed up everything yet. All of that data that they paid billions for every year is gonna be gone, and the only thing that'll be somewhat running is a few Web3 websites that are up and platforms that are up, and then the blockchain, kind of rebuilding itself and going you'll end up where you left off. So, there's that, and then if no one else has anything to use, all banking records are lost. Well, the only thing to rely on then seems to be gold, silver, and crypto.
It's like the end of the movie Fight Club. If you ever watched that, Kinsey, it was one of my favorite movies. It's from my youth, and it came out in '99. And it just at the end, they do a controlled demolition of the of these financial institution skyscrapers, which is
Mhm.
he comes out and he says this is ground zero. It's kind of eerie, right? Because that's what we call the site at 9/11 World Trade Centers. But he does the controlled demolition, and like he puts everything back to zero. He erases all the electronic records of your debt.
Mhm.
So I mean that could happen. I mean, be prepared for anything. I think keeping your head on a swivel, being able to adapt to new circumstances. This is what we talk about here. And if you listen to like Kinsey's show, Fringe Files, which goes into a lot more of the politics and news and history of our time, and same thing with my radio show, the Arterburn Radio Transmission, we'll go into some areas that somebody that just wants to hear about the markets won't go into, which is fine. I mean, that's the reason we carved out this show because there's a lot here. I mean, when you're talking about the markets or talking about currency or gold and silver, you're talking about the future
Mhm.
because that's everything that's going to matter is how you transact and what value you're able to keep in this new era because there's a new
Exactly.
economy
If
coming.
let's say that there's a chance to this other side, because maybe just a lot of people are so depressed. Like, if you're this depressed, I don't know, um, like, why give up is kinda my thing, like, at that point, you're just kinda giving up, and that really frustrates me, and the same people that hate that I buy crypto, there's another guess what? There's a whole 'nother wave of people out there that hate that I buy gold and silver, but it's so important to me that, okay, I've got my food set aside, I live off grid, let's say that we're getting through some really hard times, there's a lot of people that aren't gonna make it, and there are people that, they are gonna make it if we go through some really tough stuff. But once we get to that other side where things somewhat come back to a normalcy, or let's say maybe we win and we get some freedoms back again, what did you bring to the table on the other side? Do you have anything to actually at, like more than just work and hard labor, because there's going to have to be a lot of that from all of us. That never stops. Um, I might invest in things, but I work my ass off.
Right.
And that's, to be able to do that kind of stuff, both mentally and physically. I challenge myself almost daily. Um, and we weren't really meant to live like that anyway. But once we get to that other side, do you have anything to bring to that other side? Anything at all? And I am talking about financially, like especially if you have kids or grandkids or something. Do you have anything to leave behind to somebody?
Yeah, and it's hard to do that with just food. And I totally get the argument that that gold and silver in an economic collapse could be worthless. The only thing that I disagree with is it's never happened before.
It's
That
never
that
happened, and
level of 0 has never come, and if it does, I mean, you may have bigger problems than food.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, at that level, um, again, that's just history as our guide. That's never been the case. So if you were gonna, house any value other than like land, and property, firearms, things like that, there's never an instance where gold and zero or gold and silver are at 0.
Yes, and during those really hard times, that's literally the time where if you set yourself up in the right places. I'm not saying that this happens for everybody, but every time we have ever had a huge down cycle throughout history, there are a lot of those at the top that fall all the way to the bottom because they didn't actually buffer themselves out. They had no buffer zone. They got slapped in the face. They got knocked down. And there are those at the bottom that literally make it almost to the top because they did a few key moves that got them there. Like if people went and looked throughout history, the Great Depression would probably just be the easiest one because that's the one that happened here. Overnight, yes, people lost millions and millions of dollars, but literally within the span of a week, there are people that made millions and millions of dollars, and they set themselves up with generational wealth from that point on.
Well, yes, and it also helped that they knew it was coming, which it's, I think it was Ben Bernanke, who was former chairman of the Fed, that apologized. He says, "Yes, the Federal Reserve caused the Great Depression, caused the crash, but we won't let it happen again." Because it was for years like, "Oh no, it was." If you ever watched the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Ben Stein plays the
Love
teacher.
that movie.
Well, his lecture, years later when I was watching that movie, I go, he's wrong. Ben Stein's wrong about this. He's talking about the Great Depression. He's like, the Great
Mhm.
Depression was caused by, and he starts talking about the Smoot-Hawley tariff bill. At the time they cranked the tariffs up to protect internal manufacturing, which is what we've always done. And really the, Smoot-Hawley were just the scapegoat, right?
Mhm.
They were framed, that bill. It really was the Federal Reserve. And this is the root of everything we kind of talk about here, is understanding that, the Fed had all these smaller institutions loan money, and they made it advantageous and even necessary for them to loan money for people to invest in stocks. So it inflated these bubbles, and all these key players got out
Huh. Does this
before.
sound familiar?
Right. That's called
Does
leverage.
this ring a bell to anybody? Because there is so much leverage in these markets right now. I didn't think that a year ago, just in the stock market, that they would kind of let that continue to happen, but it's happening in stocks and in crypto. And it is just that's what makes me feel like we're in the Bermuda Triangle, Tony, is because all it takes is for those big players. I'm talking some really big players to come and make some moves. And I'll just kind of focus back on crypto here for a second because guys, it is not all gold and diamonds in the crypto world. Like, let me explain this for a second. If we had one large sell off, I mean, something huge, massive that's followed by other whales doing the same thing. You're already at kind of some devastating losses for some people out there. But if you've got that one super whale or a dark pool that decides to sell that massive amount of Bitcoin at one time, or really any currency, but Bitcoin's the dominating factor here, it would automatically trigger margin calls. What happens when margin calls get triggered? More margin calls get triggered and more and more. It's this evil roller coaster. The difference between the stock market and this is that stocks get turned off. They don't let it keep going. But once you get low enough, then you get to the point where people's stop losses start getting into place and they start getting hit, which triggers more stop losses and more. And this is why it's not impossible, for Bitcoin to actually go back down to to 20 or 30K. Guys, it could get lower than that. I mean, we're talking about a bloodbath at that point. Because there's so much leverage here. Like, that's not impossible. And whether it be stocks, gold, silver, crypto, this is why I always say to keep money on the sidelines. It's 4 times like that. A little bit of cash on the sidelines goes a long way when something's been pounded to the bottom. And that's not when you want to be scared. Get in and get greedy as hell at that point. Can I say that on here? Get
Absolutely.
greedy? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, it really goes back to what we started our conversation about, which is what is the truth here? What is the actual true north? Like what, the directions, the northeast, west, and south. What the hell's going on? I mean,
No idea.
at the end of the, I don't know. But looking at what happened in what's happening to Bitcoin in the last couple of weeks, and then that gold and silver have been in this weird doldrum. And going back to August of 2020, you just see gold break its all-time high. I'm thinking this is where we go to 3,000, because that would be more of a true valuation of what's actually happening with the dollar. And most people confuse, gold going up with it becoming more valuable. Not necessarily. It's just that the dollar loses value.
Mm-hmm.
Because the gold was $35 an ounce since 1971. So we look at the purchasing power and loss of the dollar, it goes with gold. I mean, gold kind of just keeping that steady pace and the dollar declining. So, I mean, I want to know what's actually going to happen in a case like you talk about Venezuela a lot, Kinsey. You talk about
Yeah.
how they had their stock market was breaking their all-time highs and people were in bread lines and
Mhm.
there was massive poverty and unemployment. And it's just this joke. And that's what we have here. Like our stock market's a joke.
It is.
Because it's not built on actual, it's not built on production. It's not built on profit. These
Mhm.
companies, a lot of them are zombies. They're propped up by the Fed, and it becomes advantageous for other investors and institutions to keep them alive, even though they're not profitable. That's not what the history of the stock market is. I'm just wondering, can like, there was an article up on Zero Hedge. And it's like, when will economists recognize that the U.S. economy is toast? And most economists, as you've seen over the last couple of years, there's been a great many economists that agree with lockdowns. Like, how can you have an economy in a lockdown? But they won't admit, because they see the stock market and they think the stock market is the economy. I'm just really wondering. That's what's been on my mind,
Mhm.
because
It's completely unrealistic. And, just to actually say how unrealistic this is, and whenever I talk about this, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not even excited about this, really. Um, to say how wonky this stuff is. A couple of months ago, I couldn't tell you how many months ago, I'd have to get into my portfolio and see. There are 2 or 3 companies. I told you guys I have very, very little invested in the actual stock market, but what I do have is, 10, 20-year play. Um, and, I'll probably just keep adding to it. I hadn't added anything to it, Tony. The stocks that I hold are up 200%. One of them is just over 200%, bouncing around that, and the other is up 100 and something percent. So this is far different than what people, I know stocks are moving crazy, but that's insane. Like, that's actually insanity level. I didn't put much in. I had really low buy limit set, so I just automatically got in at some point. I didn't even know I held anything really, and I got into my portfolio and I'm like, what the heck happened? I was like, well, that's cool. Wish I would have put more in. Because everything that my buy limits that I set, not all of them executed. So sad on that side, but still cool to see that. But it's up so high, I'm like, I'm not gonna put anything else in there. I'm also not gonna take it out. I'll just hold it. But I was like, that's weird. It's unrealistic. It's really unrealistic. Um, shouldn't be there. It's stupid. Like, that's I'm just trying to explain the insanity to people because it doesn't make any sense to me. It I'm
I'm
not
with
that smart. It's not that I'm that smart. You can actually go and watch YouTube videos right now of hamsters on a wheel picking cryptos and stocks, and monkeys pulling stocks out of a freaking fishbowl, and they're all up insane percentages since that time as well. Like, you don't have to be I'm not gonna say go in uneducated, but I'm also saying you don't have to be very smart to make money these days, which is scary.
Well, I mean, Jim Cramer is a good example of that. Mr. Mad Money military force vaccination guy. You know, I love those. It's so funny. Our modern capitalist, if you want to call them that, are shells of their former self, shells of what free market was all about,
Mhm.
freedom, but it's become freedom, for a lot of
Dumb.
them,
Yes.
dumb, because they're like, oh, we have free markets, but also you have no say over your own autonomy or your health or anything. It's just so weird to get these people are showing their true colors, and especially people like Jim Cramer, who has been wrong just about almost everything. He's just a shill for big pharma, and comes out and wants to take people to task for not doing exactly what he does. Well, I'm glad I'm not doing what he does, right? Because he's tied to a system I think that is dying. It's a dying system. It's
Mhm.
based off of nothing. It's falsified. All of the stock market and the central banking goes together like a hand in a glove, and
Oh, absolutely.
they use it.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad I'm not part of that system. As a matter of fact, what I'm trying to do now is get my company as strong as I can to be able to help people when we go into a system where there's going to be people needing to buy and sell precious metals safely, to raise
Mhm.
capital or to put what they have into hard assets. And I'm just trying to get as organized as I can. But I have no illusions about making a fortune. I mean, I'm looking at what's happened to Bitcoin, and I think this could be a. I'm still bullish in the long run about Bitcoin, but I'm
Mhm.
I'm also looking and asking those questions, I think, which are healthy to ask about the stock market being tied to it, because I think if you're in institutional money, this is going to be
Mm.
one of those philosophical shows, but if you're in institutional money and you're chasing that as hard as you can, I mean, really, it's like being proud of the amount of cheese you collected as a rat in a maze.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like you don't really have anything without if fundamentally we don't have freedom and we don't have the rule of law and we don't have, the Bill of Rights, then none of that really matters. And I'm just looking more about being my best self in the next level. Does that make sense? I'm trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
be. I'm not looking so much for the payday as I'm trying to protect myself, because it seems to me so volatile and there's this eerie silence of
Yes.
as to what's going on right now. And like I talked about, just that's how I feel. Like I'm reading all day long. I have like every screen I have is another, outlet that I pay for to get intel on what's happening. And then, like I said, before we go live, I go, what do you want to talk about? Because it just seems to me insane. And before I get
It
to a
absolutely is
question I
insane.
wanted to ask you real quick, I wanted to read a comment that was up by one of our uh, listeners, Jim Chambers. He says, "What's more shocking is how we all sit back and are complacent to having our currency devalued." That is that's a an interesting insight. I mean, we just allow these people to devalue our currency, and then and it's because the American people don't quite understand how that works. They just think maybe it's just because of there's economic factors of shortages and greedy corporations raise prices, but no, it is right. He's right. We sit back and we're complacent.
Yeah, I
And
don't even know what to do about it though, Tony. That's why I just put my dollar, like, wherever else that I can. And, for the most part, I hope that whenever I'm sorry, I thought I turned my phone down.
sorry.
I really hope that whenever I talk to people and whenever I talk about I'm up or down in this, which thank God a lot of times it is up. I've done some bad things before too, but it's not the worst thing. Um, Guys, like the reason I do this is so I don't have to sit around and go, "Oh, I can't afford this or that." Like every chance that we get, you know, we bought the house. We've got a good amount of land. Like the food is there, the gold and silver is there. I can honestly say that like without crypto and other things that are out there, this stuff would not be possible. And I still think that there's time to this sort of stuff. So for me, it's not like, oh, Lamborghini this or, you know, big booty bitches or something. Like I don't really care about that. And I would prefer, most of the time whenever I walk around, people probably don't think that I have like a whole lot. Like I don't like to be very flashy. Um, but it's so important to like get prepared for whatever could happen because I have no idea what it'll be. Um, and just I feel like I talk about this so much more now, Tony. Like before, I didn't talk about crypto as much, and I think you kind of know that too. But it's kind of gotten to the point where it's like, wow, this is the only thing that's really kept us, kind of in the green. You could say, as far as being able to still put stuff on the property, and generators went up. Still had to get one of those. The putting in the new solar stuff. That was expensive, but you've got to do it. And I guess you don't have to, but the way that we work, we actually have to. Um, if everything fell apart tomorrow, I could give a shit whether I had power or not. Or I wouldn't really care if I had power or not. I wouldn't have to work anymore, right? I'm just focused on like eating and surviving.
Right. No, and look, we look at the metals market, and we spent what 30, 40 minutes talking about crypto, which is important. And the reason I don't then go right into metals is because every week I tell you, hey, the dollar's losing value, right? Because I because I can tell, I can see $1.25 tree, I can see inflation, I can see gas prices, I can see all this, and it's all over the headlines. What it didn't happen, the dog that didn't bark, is that gold just stayed stagnant. I mean, you and I
Yeah.
talked about, we can drop the little hints like, hey folks, did you know this is the record year for central banks buying gold? They've since 1944, they're breaking all the records, but they don't put the headlines out.
And the price just doesn't move. It
It just
makes no
doesn't move. So I can
sense.
come out here and go, look, folks. I mean, but wait, there's more. It's going to go up 20 cents. I mean, the thing is, I just why I get stuck on when people want me to tell them about investments. I'm like, first of all, I don't do investments. Two, I'm not an advisor in any way, but I'm just like, gold is money. So like whenever I get a chance, I just turn my fiat currency into metals, because at least there I'm
Mhm.
parking it in something that's not going to go haywire. Plus, physical
Exactly.
metals don't track me. There's not some there's not some metadata stored in some server in an underground bunker owned by a multinational corporation that remembers when I bought a bag of Doritos in 1989. It doesn't have that. And so I like that it doesn't have any history. And of course, gold is non-traceable. Like, and I love Bitcoin, but hey, I mean, Bitcoin's an open source blockchain.
Mhm.
It's for all time, and I think that can be healthy, it can be bad. There's other products like Monero and Pirate Chain if you want to be more private than say Bitcoin, but like ultimate privacy. And this is funny. I want to get into your airport analogy and some of this. You talked about some civil asset forfeiture.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even talk
We'll get
about
into
that.
that, but I think the ultimate privacy, if you're in a country where you're not going to leave, is gold. I mean,
Yes.
it's physical in your hand, not some, far away stock or
Or
some.
hey, I mean, even with if you wanted to leave the country, it's not impossible. Would I get on a giant plane? No. But if my gold was performing well enough to where I knew some guy, which is maybe easy out here, that might fly small planes, I don't know. I'd be like, hey, you want some gold? Because I want to get out of here.
Talk about the civil asset forfeiture story.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So this happened in Dallas. So Dallas Police Department squad seized $100,000 of cash. Now, this was at Dallas Love Field Airport. My first question is like, who just walks around with $100,000 of cash? That just kind of seems, and maybe they were going to go buy a house. I don't know, but not a good idea to travel with that much money in the airport. Just kind of insane to me. Also, I wonder, unless you were going to buy something that day, I don't know if they were or not, Tony. Um, I don't see the point in holding this much cash, but if you needed to do something like this, again, this is where I think cryptos come into play, because you could put that on a ledger wallet, nobody would know what you had, and you can fly straight through with that $100,000 wherever you wanted to go to.
Yeah, and the
And
sad thing about civil asset forfeiture is they can just take it.
they
You have
just
to
take it.
prove
Gone.
your innocence to get it back and say it's not involved. You have to show and trace the funds back, which is sick and unconstitutional. I mean, what do I care if somebody has a duffel bag full of cash? I don't care. I mean, you ever seen the movie Dodgeball when he's like going to bribe him with 100,000 and he opens up the briefcase and it's just a little stack of money. But $100,000 is not that much cash if you've ever seen $100,000. But no, it's interesting. I mean, people should know better, though. I mean, that the thing is, the government and the bureaucrats and the little people that work at and their little minions, they want to be good little helpers and take away that cash and
Mm-hmm.
take you as a drug dealer, even though you probably just cashed out something you want to get out of a bank, or you're moving cash around, or you're going to buy something. It's none of their damn business. But
Exactly.
unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And you got to be more careful, folks. You got to look into, if you're going to move assets, legally, look into, especially traveling. I talked about, hey, you got 20, 30,000, $40,000. I mean, you can do that in jewelry. That's not that hard to do.
Yeah. Jim
But
Chambers actually says, "Why can't someone carry cash? Others wear $100,000 diamond rings. Cash isn't a crime." It is whenever you're on the airport because of our messed up government system that we have. If you are going through the airport with anything over $10,000, it could be jewelry, electronics, cash. They even include crypto. Good luck figuring out if I have that crypto or not, though, right? I mean, again, coming back even to paper wallets, you have no idea. But yeah, no, me and Tony actually talked about that, Jim, because a couple of years ago, you would easily be able to throw on some Cubans, put your diamond rings on and walk out the airport and go somewhere else just fine. But things are so much different now. Um, the apparently $10,000 for whatever reason brings up the red flags, and
Raybo posted in the chat. He says you can steal $900 a day in California, but they want to track your legal $600 transaction. That's exactly right. They don't care about the criminal. That person doesn't even have a bank account. They're their little helpers. They
Mhm.
want those people out stealing, wrecking things. You ever heard of Cloward and Piven? This is what Cloward and Piven is. In the 1960s, professors decided, hey, if you want to, what we ought to do is wreck the whole thing. And then you can get people on even greater benefits once you crash the actual systems themselves, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be, city services or government services. Cloward and Piven is about creative destruction, which is kind of the opposite side of what these multinational corporations and Klaus Schwab kind of people do. But yeah,
Yep.
that's what California, George Soros funded all those DAs out there. And so those places aren't going to get, or not just out there, all around the country. If you live in a major city, chances are George Soros owns your DA because they want to not prosecute any of these crimes. They want to Cloward and Piven and wreck the whole thing.
Mhm.
So that's why I look at, there was that article again. We'll go back to Zero Hedge. There was an article up and said, why don't economists recognize that the country's falling apart, that our economy is not strong, that the stock market is not the economy? Just like Venezuela, the stock market is not the economy. The stock market is just something that exists unto itself. I mean, Main Street is what happens when they wrecked the businesses, when they shut down the country. I say Trump did. Trump shut down the country in March of 2020, then funded the Democrat governors and the Republican governors who locked everybody down. And that was, of course, the central banks funded it. They wrecked 100,000 businesses, at least. And not to mention, all the smaller entrepreneurs and handymen and people, plumbers, and all these people, just service industry businesses that were wrecked. And they wonder why, things don't seem as, strong. Well, I wonder why they're not as strong, but the stock market's doing great, just like in Venezuela.
It's so scary. Like, I'm not kidding whenever I tell you guys, like, I have it feels like there's stones in my stomach, Tony, because things are normal. You have to keep living life. I can't just stop working, right? I can't just hide. But I know that any day, and it could be 2 years from now, but any day, something really bad is gonna happen. Like, the system is broken. We're being held together with duct tape. And if anybody knows, duct tape's great, but I promise you it was made better 10 years ago than it was today. So,
That's newer imported duct tape. Daniel Whitaker in the chat also said it's something if you drive across I-10 and have more than $1,000 in you, they'll confiscate it
this
for
is
you on
true
suspicion alone. That's
in
exactly
so many states, Daniel. It's not just in Oregon. It's in a lot of states. My partner, when he was younger, no cash involved at all, but just because of the car that he drove when he was younger, if he did not have a friend that went to high school with him that was also an officer, they were going to absolutely tear his car apart. I mean, like, they had knives out, they had the dogs out, they were ready to rip up leather seats, and, they're basically allowed to do everything or anything, and, that was even 15, 20 years ago. I mean, so, probably about 15 years ago, so think about that, like, they can get away with so much, and most of us don't have the money to fight back. Um, I gotta say, though, if you've got an extra 25 to $50 a month, Legal Shield, totally worth it, worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a member Legal Shield for coming up on 20 years. So I've always loved that product, and you can get a hold of an attorney, 24/7, and you can have documents reviewed, all kinds of good. It's a good start, to know your rights, especially in those situations. And it's going to get weirder and weirder, especially as they keep collapsing these cities. And this is by design. They keep collapsing these metropolitan areas. They get the Soros funded DAs. It's all about a race to the bottom. And these blue states that were
Mhm.
once wonderful, vibrant places. I mean, you can see even the big corporations are like, wow, we can't stay open. We have too much theft. High-end stores like Louis Vuitton, I mean, massive crime waves. This is by design. This is why you have to be prepared for the next level by making smart choices about your own security for, how you're going to keep your assets secure, not traveling. Don't be like this. Again, if you have $100,000 in cash, don't get on an airplane. These are not things that
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, most people with cash are not criminals, like
No, they're
99.99%,
probably gonna go and buy a house out of state or something in all cash. Like, it probably wasn't anything super nefarious. Even if it was, I don't care,
I know
but
friends of mine that, cashed out a Bitcoin, and then they filled out, cash transaction reports, and they had cash. I mean, this goes to the IRS. If you're a criminal, you don't tell the IRS. That's what I mean, these are all legal things that get done. They just happen to have cash.
well, and they know anyway the smartest criminals pay taxes, so
Well, the smartest criminals
that's
run
why
things.
they don't get in
The
trouble.
biggest criminals run everything, right?
Mhm.
These are the most depraved, degenerate, satanic people. I say people, whatever they are, that run things. And I mean, that's why
Reptilians.
they've got some kind of lizardy aspect to them. But that's the Luciferian bankster notes. You go back and talk about spot. By the way, we didn't even do that. If you ever want to check the price of crypto, ladies and gents, let me put this up on the screen. If you ever want to check the price of crypto and or gold and silver in real time, you can go to wisewolf.gold. And on wisewolf.gold, you got two tickers up there. Bitcoin, of course, 50,704 Luciferian bankster notes per Bitcoin. And gold up $6.44 after open today, 1,787 Luciferian bankster notes, federal fiat, Federal Reserve notes, also known as dollars per troy ounce. And silver is up 11 cents. Woo! Just 11 cents, Kenzie. Can you believe it? Are you getting that Lambo yet? $22.50 per troy ounce for the white metal. So, Kenzie, we got about a minute left. Tell people where they can find you.
Fringe_files on Twitter is the easiest place to go, guys. It's where I'm most active, and you can also find my link tree there for all of the other areas that you could find me. I'm suspended on YouTube right now, though, so you can subscribe there if you want, but it'll be a little bit over a week before I can do another video.
They only censor the truth, kids. So keep at it. We'll be back next week with Kenzie and more insight. And I appreciate the conversation. Darth David in the chat says fiat is fake. It's the head of the snake. You listen to this program, sir. Send me a Darth. Send me a private message, and I'm going to send you something for Christmas. We'll send you a little bit of silver from Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. Appreciate each and every one of you folks. We'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Central Time on aftermath.fm, and of course all of the other little technocratic control platforms. I don't even want to say their name because I might have said a keyword that puts me in some algorithmic prison, where they strip me of my constitutional rights of free speech. I don't know what they're going to do. So I never even dropped their name, but we're on there for now. So you can find us on some of those platforms as well. This has been the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show, markets in the monetary system, wealth and warfare, bullion and Bitcoin, all the good stuff under the sun when it comes to preparing for the next level. And of course, in a world of fiat reality, the truth is solid gold. See you next time.